This week we watched Small Things Like These, directed by Tim Milet.
The rapid or the progressing so far of Irish cinema and Irish film that is now being distributed like globally, especially in the States. It's an amazing movement to see because then you also see a lot of these actors you've seen in other projects and you weren't aware they're Irish popping up like, oh, I know this person, blah 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 blah. It was really good and exciting to see. But yeah, this is an amazing picture. Cillian Murphy does an amazing performance as a man who is like wrestling between two thoughts and ideas. It's one of those movies that's basically talking about just because it's quote unquote legal doesn't make it right. And
Mhm.
this is dealing with the topic of the Catholic Church and a lot of the I guess the nuns or whatever particular running basically and taking like women who are usually ostracized from society like sex workers and like single mothers and stuff like that and forcing him to servitude, you know, which is like really topical. It's very like handmaiden-esque as far as it, but it's actually a really real world example of it. And it's like I said, a lot of the cinema we've been watching so far, like in general, like it's been really topical for what's going on in the world right now.
First of all, I just love the Irish Renaissance we're having. So many Irish actors who maybe are new to our screens or newer to our screens or people who we've been watching for years and years. It does seem like there has been this like resurgence of like not only Irish actors, but Irish films, Irish literature. Like it just television. Like it's really, I love that we're in this moment. It's great. Um, but yeah, this is based on a book, and I read the book. I read the other book, Foster, that is written by Claire Keegan, who's an amazing Irish author, and she writes these like really small books, like maybe 80 or so pages of just like people showing kindness to others, and it's people who already don't have a lot, but they're still willing to like reach a hand out and help people in need. And I think another movie was made from Foster. I think that's on Hulu. I haven't seen that one, but this one I read and I was so excited when I heard that Cillian Murphy was going to produce a film based on this book. I was like, that's great because these books are fantastic. So I was really excited about this one. And he is just a great actor. Like he's just so amazing. Like, because he doesn't do a lot, but his face is so expressive that it kind of shows you and tells you everything that the character is thinking and feeling. And I think in terms of like adaptations, it's a pretty good one. Like I feel like all of the themes from the book were very much carried on into the film, and that this is a story about like a man who didn't have much. He lost his mother at a very young age, and someone was kind to him and took him in and helped him kind of find his feeding. And he was able to have this business, and he has a family now, and he's has all these young girls that he's a dad of, and he seems to be really content with his life. And then he starts to realize what's going on at this it's called like they're like houses for young women, but this was like a worldwide thing where like it first started off as like a Protestant thing where they had like these houses where women, like I guess on the edge of society, would be able to stay, but they would have to work without pay. Um, and then it became like a Catholic thing, but it was like in the US, it was in England, like it was everywhere. So I think the last one closed in like 1998 or something. Like it closed in like the late 90s. So for a really long time, there were just these young women who either had nowhere to go or their parents had sent them away to these houses and they were basically just being exploited completely by these religious organizations. And it wasn't illegal because it was a religious organization.
Yeah.
So, like, the state didn't feel like they needed to interfere in that, which is insane, but honestly not surprising when it comes to the Catholic Church, no offense, but um, you know. So I was like, I hadn't read the book in a while, so I was like, I had forgotten some plot points. So it was interesting to see it again in this in a visual form. And it really did hit me hard, like on a couple of levels, but just on the fact that like there's this man who is living in a small town, so like everybody knows who he is and like he knows everyone else. And the issues of like living in a small town is that you can't do anything without anyone else, without other people finding out and having
Yeah.
judgments on it. But and especially in the small Irish Catholic town back in the 80s, everything was so religious and so like you did not mess with these ladies. Like so it was just like he was really going against society. And this is a person who had worked to fit into society. In the book, I think his mom is a sex worker, or she used to
Used
be.
to be a
Yes, that's I think that's what happened. So like he knows what it's like to be um bullied, discriminated against because of his past. And the fact that like he worked so hard to have that kind of normalcy and then he sees what's going on and he's just like, yeah, no, that's not
yeah.
that's not okay. And like he can't save all of the girls and the women who live there, but he does what he can when he sees this young person who I think reminds him of his mom. I think she reminds him of one of his daughters, and I just feel like he's like, nah, I couldn't. If it was one of my kids, like I could not have
Yeah.
let them stay in this abusive situation. If and knowing that like if his mom got caught by one of these ladies and she would also be in the same situation, I think it was just like too close to the chest for him to like turn his back and not do anything. And I feel like him reaching a hand out and like going against the grain was really just wonderful. I don't know. It's just such a more than like the political stuff of what this movie is saying and what's going on currently today. I feel like what really hits me is just like how much we need people like that, like people who are just kind and
Yeah.
people who are just like willing to like help others.
Just basic compassion.
Yeah.
It's one of those like he who knows it feels it kind of moments. Like you
Hmm.
said, growing up with his mother and like his mother was ostracized into their family, and luckily a wealthy stranger said, "No, okay, cool, you can work with me," and they're fine. And then she doesn't die by at the hand of like the nuns or whatever. She gets run over accidentally, but still, he understood her being ostracized because he himself, like you said, was bullied for it. Like his mom's washing his jacket as a kid, and she goes, "Oh, what is this?" And it's like I heard somebody was like bullying you and spitting on you, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. Like he's well aware, and then he goes on, like you said, and overcomes whatever barriers that society put in front of him based on who he was. And it runs a coal business, delivering coal around the city and making money and blessed with four daughters, five daughters.
Hmm.
And so that impetus, like people always say when you're for especially for guys, like, oh, this woman is someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone so and so, and he actually kind of lives it as, oh, what if this girl here at the time was my daughter? Especially after the lead nun makes a threat, oh, what? Oh, your oldest daughter. Hopefully, your daughters can still have an education here. Like, oh, you don't threaten my family now. So now now I was thinking of maybe ignoring it, but now you
Hmm.
went and said, oh, now you talk about my children, and now I'm taking action. And at that point, when they're escorting him out the room, he goes and finds the girls. Like, if you need anything, run and find me.
Hmm.
So and then
Hmm.
the nun tries to coerce him with like a Christmas bonus, and then mentions it to his wife. The thing is, his wife is also aware of what the nuns are doing, because she's like, oh, we should leave it alone and don't deal with it. Which is another thing of, sometimes in society you have people who are aware and who are also aware of the discriminatory practices, also still upholding those practices as well, refusing to rock the boat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the more of Irish book like Irish literature that I read, the more that I realize how it was a very um insular country, like a very like n unless you lived in like a city, you really had this was like your situation. Like it was very like you have to live by a certain status quo
Yeah.
or else you will be ostracized from our community.
Everybody knows each
Um,
other kind of
Everyone
thing.
knows each other, even if it's not like super religious. I think the rule, and I mean, that it was a very religious country. Like there were a lot of rules around like what women and men were expected to do. I think they hadn't passed like abortion rights for like until like very probably not recent, but like within the last, I want to say 20, 30 years. Like it was a very conservative place.
Yeah.
And so it kind of does make sense that the wife is not like interested in doing more than like being like, oh, well, I feel bad about that situation and not like trying to do anything further than that because they're trying to look after their family and stuff. And that's what they kept saying in the film. They were like, just look after your own family, just worry about your own kids, like just mind your business, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of hard to mind your business when like just over the hill, like women are being captured and forced to work. Like it's really that whole scene, the whole sequence where he goes into the coal shed and he finds Sarah for the first time. And, you know, he has a meeting with Emily Watson, who is terrifying. She is such a good actress. She's so scary. And also not Irish. She is British. And so she
Yeah.
does this is the second movie that she's done a really amazing Irish accent in.
God's Creatures was the first
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
she's fantastic. Um, but that whole sequence when they're like in the room and she's like talking to him over the tea that he does not drink, and then she kind of threatens not to accept his younger kids into their school, knowing that like that is kind of the only opportunity they're going to have for an education in this very small community is to go to that school. And for her to like threaten to be like, no, well, your kids, those younger kids probably won't be admitted to our school. And then trying to pay him off so he won't talk about the things that he has seen at this place. Awful. And then the fact that she tells the girl, I think, yeah, Sarah, that like, oh, you know, take her upstairs, tell her to go to sleep, give her a nice meal. And then as he's driving away, she's like getting pulled out in the snow to go work. I was just like, wow, that is so devastating. Like it just hurt so much. The fact that like it doesn't even matter what she did. She did not deserve that. Like
Yeah,
none of
no,
the
no.
women there deserve to be in the snow before Christmas, like working. They didn't even have coats. They were just out there in like linen dresses and a sweater. Like, what is going on? So I was just like, so I didn't, and then what I love about the direction, I think that's why Tim, he did a really good job, is like as he's driving away after seeing those scenes, it's kind of like the sound is a little bit distorted and you're just hearing his breathing, like he's literally having a panic attack or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's such a great choice. And so in terms of like the direction of the film, I thought like it was very realistic in terms of how it was filmed. Um, and I love that we kind of returned to certain scenes, as like certain scenes were like maybe a foundation, and then like the scenes around it changes how you feel about like what you're seeing. So every time he walks up to his door and goes inside and he does the routine of like washing his hands and stuff, what it means in the beginning, just like showing you his routine, and what it means by like the end
Mm.
after he's experiencing this stuff where home doesn't even, I don't know, everything just feels like it's unraveling because internally he is struggling with this. Like, what should he do? Should he go and save this girl? Or should he just, you know, watch over his family like everyone keeps telling him? Like, it just takes on a different meaning. And even like me seeing his daughters take a new meaning once I've seen Sarah in that coal, like being locked by the nuns or whoever in that coal shed, like everything that we kind of returned to with the house, it kind like between the house and then in that house, whatever that conservatory nunnery, whatever that is called, um, it just I don't know, it just completely broke my heart.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is awful. This is awful.
Yeah, like going in, like you said, like in the beginning when you see him washing his hands, you're assuming, oh, he's a co-worker, he wants to get the dirt off. And then as the movie progresses, you see him washing hands, you realize it's a psychological thing. It's kind of like trying to wash the blood off his hands of this situation. And he comes to a breast like the last time where he meets her in the coal shed, where he's
Mhm.
like scrubbing his hands so it almost bleeds. And then he's also remembering like he decides, oh, let me go see Ned, and and I think he was aware as well because he's a lot of the shots he's cutting back to is him interacting with Ned, and when the lady goes, "Oh, he sold the property, and you kind of look like him. Is he your father?" That kind of thing. Like we were kind of like he was. I
Mm.
think he was already there, but then what also aided in telling of that was him also watching Ned and his mother interact when he was younger as a kid. Him having, that secondary, even with the loss of his mother, still having that secondary parental figure in his life to help him, which I also think I kind of now think the lady, the person his mother was working for, she wasn't really working for them. That was Ned's mother most likely, you know. That's my
Oh yeah.
that's how I put
Mm.
it in my head. But yeah,
Mm.
at least he still, even without his mother and the way she was ostracized in his own family, he still had another parental figure watching out for him, and realizing these girls have nobody. Like, you know.
Right. Right. Actively no one. Like, and the fact that it seems like everyone in the town knows what's happening
Yeah, because
and no one's doing anything.
the worst part of this is like the bar owner he goes to. Like the bar owner's like, "Hey, I heard something such for the nuns," which is weird because you'd think deeply Protestant, like Roman Catholic people, like, "Hey, temperance, no alcohol," but here the nun knows everything, and the nun's business is fine. Like, come on, really? That's,
Oh yeah. I think that's the thing about being Catholic. You can just ask for forgiveness and then it's not a thing anymore.
yeah. Oh, so that's what they gotta
Um,
do. They gotta enslave these girls, and we'll pray about it a couple times, and it's okay, that kind of thing.
that's what I found so, which I think was again great choice in terms of direction, but and also just like in the script, the fact that like you're seeing the horrors that is happening at this homeschool, whatever you want to call it, and then the nun gets up like for one of their like pre-Christmas services, and she is the one who's speaking about love and kindness and temperance, and it's just like how do you say these words and then know what you're doing? Like, what in your mind is
Yeah,
shifting where you don't understand that, like, if God is love, y'all keep chanting it, then why are you abusing these girls? Like,
yeah. and and not just that, the whole like you said, the direction, like the whole way that particular scene was like shot and lit, and it had, and especially once again, Emily Watson, like amazing job. The way she like delivers that, soliloquy, comes
mm-hmm,
off like very sinister and like perfect, like perfect acting from her right there.
mm-hmm. And it is so the way she like uses his wife in order to get the wife to kind of rein him in by she like saying like, "Oh yeah, I saw Sister Mary or Mother Mary at the church, and she's like told me that you got me something like manipulative to the nth degree." That's like true evil because she's like, "I am moving pieces around to make sure that you stay out of our business." Like
Mm,
it's gross. It's like super super gross.
yeah.
And I think that some of the survivors of those homes, I think they may have assisted in this movie.
Mm,
So like, or given some certain interviews and stuff that they used to help shape the film. But like, yeah, it's just like I can't believe that this stuff was like happening and nobody really was doing anything about it. I think someone like wrote an article about it or somehow it got out. No, like, yeah, I think it got out in like the 90s because there was like a mass grave at one of these places and they were like, okay, so what happened?
yeah.
Why is there a mass grave here? It's kind of like Nickel Boys. It's like, what the hell were you doing?
How does this like happen
Yeah.
in society? Like, and the thing was, I know, like you mentioned, like how they were all happening globally. Like most countries ended this practice like the 1800s, about 1800 to 50, 853, 860. In Ireland, they were going on to like 1996.
Yeah.
Like that's like in my head, that's like yesterday. Like
Right.
for that long, and like they mentioned, like it's like centuries of women who don't exist anymore have just disappeared due to this, or people who were killed or silenced or punished who don't want to say anything about it because they still have fear of repercussions from what's happening. Like, and you end that practice in 93 and people are still so psychologically scarred that they have difficulty talking about that their experience. That's like really damaging.
Yeah. I think I think what's good about the book and also about the film is that you don't see all of the torture and the horror. You kind of see just like little glimpses of it, but it gives you enough of an idea to know that like this was awful.
Hmm.
It's kind of like in the zone of interest where you don't see the what's happening in the concentration camp. You just hear what's happening. But that to me is even more effective because it's like that's just your imagination going. Now you're just thinking about like what the horrors that are happening
Hmm.
just over the fence. And it's just like the horrors that are happening just over the hill. Like it's pretty effective. And so in a way, I kind of like when they don't show like just the graphic violence that happens, because that could be oh kind of hard to digest. And
Hmm.
sometimes it can be like, well, that's what you're just focusing on now. You might not be focusing on like the overall message sometimes if you're just like focusing on the violence. It's a choice. Like every director chooses like how they want to do that. But I did think that even in the book, because you're reading it through Bill Furlong's
Perspective,
perspective,
yeah.
you don't know everything. So you're only getting little glimpses. And I like that they translated that into the film because honestly, like women like just being like exploited and having violence against them has been so displayed over our history of film and television. So I think it's okay not to see
Yeah.
everything, but
And
like it was enough.
yeah.
It was
And
enough to be effective.
and you bring up something perfect. Like these are like you bring up dang, what was the first movie you named? Oh my gosh.
Oh, Nickel Boys,
Nickel Boys, and then the other
the zone
the
of
Zone
interest.
of
Yeah.
Interest. These are three movies dealing with like highly sensitive topics, dealing with oppressed individuals. But the perspective the movie takes and the stories it takes and the way they're shot have to do with who's engaging with the story. Nickel Boys, you're actively sitting with two boys who are experiencing this oppression. Like literally, they even do POV shots to put you in their sense. Zone of Interest, you're experiencing it from the interest of not just the perpetrators, but the people who benefit from it. The commander's wife, like her life and her family's perfect. Like there's no worries for her, but you're still aware what's happening on the side of the fence. Like, and then from this movie, you're dealing with somebody who's neither a perpetrator nor a person of actually being affected by it, but he's still impacted by it based on what he sees. And he doesn't even, and his triggering point isn't him seeing everything. He just sees one glimpse. And then from seeing that one glimpse, he's like, if they're doing this, what else are they doing? You know?
Hmm.
And I'm like, when you have stories like this and you're able to dissect the the person telling the story and also sell the story in that way, it helps it a lot. Because you could shoot this movie and try and include everybody's perspective. Like some movies might say, okay, we're going to show you everything the girls have been put through, but at least they brought it like, okay, this story is from Bill's perspective. Like you mentioned before, him driving home in his car, in the truck, and then everything is getting quiet and you're hearing his breathing only. Like zoning you in on how this situation affects these individuals in the storytelling and the showcasing of it.
Yeah. Honestly, I think this film was great. It really it I think it's one of those movies where like it's not flashy, it's not giving you a whole bunch of like stuff, but it's so effective, like emotionally, it just really hits you. And I think that's what makes a great film. And I also feel like it was such a great adaptation of the book as well, because that's exactly how I felt when I was reading the book. It was just like it just hits
Yeah.
in such a way where it's like, whoa, that this is really disturbing and sad. And like, because it's based on a true story, it just makes it even that much more salient, I think. But yeah, I thought this film was great. All the performances were fantastic, but especially Cillian Murphy and Emily
Mhm.
Watson, just
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. Like, just
Yeah.
great performances. I love that. I love watching amazing actors because it's like, you don't even have to do much. And
Nah.
like just the way their body language, how their tone, their facial expression. Oh,
Yeah. Like we said, like Emily Watson, like her whole menacing presence in the picture, kind of very sinister, and her delivery and just her mannerisms. Like Cillian Murphy has been like everybody kind of figured out who he was at Peaky Blinders, but he's always been like a wonderful actor in those quiet
Hmm.
moments, who could express with their face or just an eye or just a look or just a tonal shift in their delivery of their dialogue. Where like even in the beginning where he's like talking to his wife, like, oh, I don't know. I remember getting a jigsaw puzzle, like those kind of his dialogue delivery, so amazing. It's a art that I think very few actors
Yeah.
actually have. Like to be able to sell performances in silent moments and in like the quiet moments and just have to use your body to like sell the expression. I don't think a lot of actors have that gift, but Cillian Murphy has that in spades.
Hmm.
Did you like that clip? Well, you can listen to the entire podcast because the 16mm Film Crew podcast is available on all major podcast platforms.